Terrific, thank you. So, welcome everyone to today's local government education program entitled Understanding Rural Economics and Creating Stronger, More Sustainable Rural Economies, brought to you by the University of Illinois Extension. My name is Mike Delaney, and I'm an Extension Community and Economic Development Educator based in Ogle County up here in the Northern State Line region. We'll begin with some quick housekeeping notes that are familiar to folks that are regularly on our LGE webinars. Note that you can, if desired, activate Zoom's closed captioning function at the bottom of your screen with the appropriately labeled button. We will be recording today's webinar and making it available on our Community and Economic Development YouTube channel. After the conclusion of today's presentation, registered participants will receive an email with slides and a link to the recording of the webinar. If you didn't register in advance for the webinar, that's fine. If you'd like to receive the materials, just drop your email in the chat box below during the course of the webinar to let us know, and we'll make sure to add you to the distribution list. As always, you're welcome at any time to share your questions in the Zoom chat space. We do plan to review the questions in a Q&A period following the main presentation. Now, I am delighted to introduce today's presenter, my Extension colleague, Susan Odom. Susan serves as a University of Illinois Regional Extension Specialist in Community Development and is based in Vienna, down in Southern Illinois. She began her career with the University of Illinois Extension in 2005 and holds the certification of Professional Community and Economic Developer from the Community Development Council. Susan also has her MBA summa cum laude from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Much of Susan's work in recent years has focused on helping smaller and rural communities develop strategies to rejuvenate their local economies. Susan, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mike. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased that you took time out of your day to join us today. As Mike said, I work in the southernmost region of the state, and I've been studying and doing research on the rural economics topic throughout my career with Extension. Here in the local areas, generally I'm referred to in some form or fashion as the shop local person. I will say that this is the first time that I have delivered a webinar on this topic, and as my preferred method of delivery is more in that small group setting with activities and group interaction and discussion, which is very difficult to do on this platform and with the number of participants that we have today. Another thing that I hope that you will appreciate from the presentation is I do like to keep it simple, keep it in simple terms for you. This is not me pictured in the photo that you see on the screen. Instead, it's one of our community champions, Emily Curley. And she undertook a small community development project to erect a sign at the city park in Vienna, highlighting that Johnson County is the bicycling capital of Illinois. And so when cyclists visit, they can take a selfie here to note that they've been here to the bicycling capital. So as you go through the presentation, think about what is your community or your county or your region known for? What are the things that highlight your things about your area? So in addition, Johnson County is also home to or part of the Shawnee Forest Country, so where the Shawnee National Forest is located. So we're also home to the Tom Hill State Trail. The headquarters for the trail is located in Vienna, next to our city park. And years ago, a community development group undertook a major community development project with it. And basically, they worked with IDNR to turn an abandoned railroad into a trail for hiking and biking. And through the years, we've really just saw growth around that as now there are bike events and running events and just a variety of different uses for the trail. And it's been a great asset for the community. But I will say it was something initially that wasn't necessarily welcomed or appreciated by everyone as they started that project. So hopefully you are sitting at your desk, or because I would like, if possible, for you to find a piece of paper. That could be a piece of just blank copy paper or lined paper, and also a pen or pencil. If you could find those things while I'm going through the next few slides, I'll ask you to use that in a few minutes. And also don't feel the need to really take a lot of extensive notes. I have tried to incorporate content on the individual slides that I think would be beneficial for you, and that slide deck will be provided to you after the event. So don't feel that you need to take a lot of notes other than just get out a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, because I'm going to have you jot some things down about your community as we work through this program. So first of all, we want to break down today's topic, understanding rural economics. So we'll start with rural. When I think of rural, your version or your definition may be quite different, but when I think of rural, I think of villages, small towns. I think of farms and farmlands, some ranches, some open spaces. Those are the things that I think of. Different federal agencies use different definitions to define rural. So the share of the population throughout the country that is considered rural dramatically changes depending on that definition. And according to the census, rural is what's left after they define the rural urban areas. So rural is what's left. So I thought that was an interesting thing, that they don't even have a real definition that the census uses other than it's rural if it's not urban. So once again, we're going to talk about economics. That's the second part. So economics can be that management of income and expenses. So if you work in a city or a county, that can be the flow of dollars that come into your community and the dollars that flow out. And you hope that you have more revenues coming in than you have expenses going out. Economics can also be about activities related to production and consumption, and also the trade of goods and services. So there's several different ways to think about economics. So in the basics, what we wanted to define rural economics today is the flow of monies into and out of rural economies. And we're going to discuss some of the issues and challenges there. So I did glance over the registration list, and while I recognize that not everyone who registered may be on the live webinar, there were communities as small as 200, and there were large cities that we had registrations from. So as we go through this, I hope that everyone will find some value for you, but keep in mind it's a broad topic, and there's a lot of different perspectives based on that. So as we continue our discussion of rural economics, I want each of you to have the opportunity to define rural however you feel it applies to your community and your specific situation. I also want you to define community the way that it makes sense to you. So whether that be at the municipal level or the county level, or perhaps even at a regional level. So through my work, if I'm working on something with the city of Vienna, then that might be what I consider to be rural. I could also say, yes, Johnson County is a rural county. Similarly, in a lot of the work that I've done since I started with Extension, I might be focused on the southernmost 16 counties of the state. And so that might be, I would define that region as rural, even though we have some larger communities such as Marion and Carbondale within those boundaries. The overall area is considered rural. So on your slide there, you have a couple of pictures. And so I want you to take a look at those pictures, and I want you to think, and then I want you to answer this question for yourself. If you were describing your rural economy as a pool, which one looks more like yours? So is yours the vibrant pool at the bottom that's full of water, has lots of amenities and people enjoying themselves? Or is it perhaps more like the stagnant, dried up, perhaps in need of repairs and maintenance, lacking people and investment? Is it more like the picture at the top? Or are you somewhere maybe in between? So think about what does if you were describing your rural economy as a pool, what does that look like for you? So I had said at the beginning for you to pull out a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. And so your task, though, what I want you to use that for is I want you to draw the shape on a sheet of paper. Now, I would recommend that you do it portrait versus landscape, and also to leave some room to make notes at the top and the bottom and on the sides. But your image doesn't have to look exactly like this. Just quickly scan out something that looks very similar to this. Okay, so then imagine, if you will, that within this pool are your community's residents, their businesses, organizations, unique assets, and the wealth that goes along with those. So at the top of your pool, I want you to think about some of the ways that money flows into your local economy. And you might want to list those. You could probably list those at the top. And I know sometimes that can be challenging for people to think about, well, what does she mean by that? So let me give you an example that would kind of open up that thought process for you. So once again, I live here in Johnson County in southernmost Illinois, and we have a lot of farmers here, and they grow a lot of corn and soybeans. Well, all of the corn and soybeans that they grow are not consumed in Johnson County. So they export those out, and money comes into the local economy back to the farmer in payment. So that's a way that money flows into your local economy, is money flowing in from the outside as a business, in this case, a farmer is selling corn and soybeans, and the money comes back into the community. Now, that's just one example. There are many other ways to think about this. So some of those other inflows and injections, it could be from other export industries. Maybe you have some manufacturing, other types of businesses like that. It could be from government payments. Maybe someone receives Social Security. It could be from a government payroll. Maybe somebody works for the federal government or the state government. Or it could also be a payroll. Maybe a resident of your community works outside of the community. They go to work, they bring back their paycheck, and their paycheck comes back into the local economy. Similarly, you may be in a situation to where you're located near an interstate, and maybe travelers get off the interstate. Maybe they buy some gas, get something to eat, do some shopping. That's new money coming into your community. Similarly, a similar concept with tourists. You may have assets that attract people from outside of your community to come in, and hopefully they spend dollars there as well. And then also from your small businesses and entrepreneurs, as they either have people come into a local shop that they may own within your community, spend dollars, or maybe they're even shipping something out of the community that way. So if you have an idea that you want to put into the chat, once again, I won't be checking the chat while we're talking, but if you have a good example of how money flows into your community, a unique way, please feel free to share that in the chat. So now we're going to talk about how money flows out of the economy. So these are some of the ways that we think of generally when we think about the economy. You may think about the retail portion of the economy. And these are some of the different retail sectors. And for each of you on the call, what you can purchase locally and maybe what you do purchase locally will vary. So your leakage that you're going to put at the bottom of your page of how money flows out of your community, everybody's will be slightly different. For me here in Johnson County, we have a Ford dealership. So I can go buy a new Ford truck or a Ford SUV at the local dealership and purchase that in my community. If I want to purchase furniture, I'm actually going to have to go to the neighboring county because we don't have a furniture store. So for everyone, there may be a unique mix of things that you can either purchase in your community or that you're not able to purchase in your community. And also, keep in mind, just because it's available in the community doesn't mean people are purchasing it there. For example, everyone in Johnson County doesn't drive a Ford, even though that's the only dealership that we have available in our local economy. So once again, you'll have this list to think of, but so these are just some of the retail types of that we think of that you might have money leaking out. And certainly as through the years, I think we saw maybe a decline, especially in areas like appliances, electronics, home furnishings, hobbies and entertainment. Some of those things certainly become less available in rural economies. And the picture there just kind of depicts an iceberg. And when we think of an iceberg, you can see a certain portion of it. But the economic reality is there's so much more of that iceberg that is below the surface. So beyond retail, there really are other leakages from other sectors. So that could be from the service sector. So maybe that's your hairstylist or your salon or your spa or where you get your car repaired. It could be for financial services like banking or insurance or investments. It could be education, whether that's higher education. Maybe you don't have a community college or a university in your community, or maybe you utilize a private school outside the area. It could also be for healthcare. So anything from your doctors to your dentist to your optometrist to you're getting lab work done, you're going to an actual hospital, and also business to business. So as businesses purchase products and services from other businesses outside the community. So those are additional ways that we think about leakage of dollars. And so those really overall are kind of your outflows out of your community. So think of that in terms of where we were talking about the corn and soybeans being your exports earlier, that things are exported out and money comes in. The imports are just the opposite. An individual resident or a business imports something into the community and money flows out. And that could be, maybe a business is purchasing something they're going to sell within their business, or I go outside of the community, purchase something, I'm importing something back into the community. And then the sectors that we just talked about, retail, service, financial, healthcare, and business to business. So hopefully you've thought of some ways that monies flow out of your economy. And if you do have a unique example, once again, feel free to put it in the chat, but it's not required. So given the buying patterns that we've seen in recent years, we saw substantial growth of big box retailers and regional shopping destinations, and then most recently online shopping. And many of our remaining businesses in our downtowns and main streets are now faced with an uncertain future based on that. Certainly prior to the pandemic, at least in our rural areas, the vast majority of our dollars appeared to be leaking out in favor of big box retailers and regional shopping destinations. But since the start of the pandemic, we've saw an exponential growth in online shopping, and that's a trend that I don't see changing. So we will continue to deal with that change in patterns there. So once again, we've talked about money flowing into the local economy and money flowing out of the local economy. So the next thing to think about with your pool that you've drawn on your piece of paper is how much are you actually retaining in your local pool? So basically, how much water is in your pool? So what I'd like you to do is to draw a line to indicate where you think your community's water level is. So is it up here? Is it perhaps way down here, somewhere in between? Where do you think you are as far as how much money that flows into your economy? How much are you retaining? Or is it all coming in and then just immediately going out? Where do you think you're at? So that's just for you individually. Think about. So the next thing that we're going to talk about, I will note as we go through this that some of these strategies also support the next section, but I will only mention them once, just not to be overly repetitive and in the interest of time. So to improve your local economy, you want to have more money flowing in from the top, okay? So you want to increase the size of that tap. So you want this to be larger, okay? And that comes by having more residents, having more businesses, having your residents have more earnings, and your businesses have more revenues coming in. Those are kind of basic things to think about. Some of the strategies that we might think about, and once again, they can apply in other segments as well. So certainly you want to focus on retaining the residents you've had. We certainly have saw population decline in many of our small rural communities and counties. We certainly saw that in the 2020 census, and certainly around the rural brain drain and the young adults leaving rural communities. We certainly have saw some issues there with those numbers. So you certainly want to retain the residents you have, but then you might work on a resident attraction strategy. Maybe you want to try to attract young adults to your community, or maybe you want to focus on seniors, or a combination. You could focus on thinking about ways to increase the skills for your existing residents so that they can have increased wages, or maybe they get a new opportunity to work somewhere where they make more money. You could focus on a targeted business attraction strategy. So maybe there's something missing in your community. And so when interstate travelers or tourists come in to visit, maybe something's missing, but if you added something in your community, then they would spend more dollars when they were there. You certainly want to, in addition to resident attraction and retention, you want to focus on business attraction and retention, but that retention specifically retaining the businesses that you have. I don't think that there are many rural communities that can afford to lose the businesses that they currently have. They're just too hard to replace. So you want to give opportunities for them to not only remain in your community, but also opportunities for them to expand through new options. Maybe they offer new product lines, or they expand to the point that they need a new facility so that they can make more money and have more earnings and revenues come in. And then also another way would be to think about growing your own entrepreneurs. So increasing the number of small businesses and entrepreneurs in your community that either set up shops where people come into the community and support them, and or they ship things out to people. So different ways to improve your economy by increasing the size of your tab. Then we want to focus on how we can plug the leaks. So thinking about improving your economy by decreasing the size of the drain. So making that smaller. So less money is leaking out that drain. You're slowing that process. And you do that as residents and businesses spend more money within the local economy. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the ways that happens. So one of the keys is, once again, thinking back to that pool and where you drew your line, how much money you think you're retaining in your pool. You want to focus on how to keep those dollars that remain in your community, in your pool, circulating. And that increases your water level. So you increase that water level as you think about those dollars circulating in your economy. That circulation increases the water level, similar to if you put a spoon into a glass of water and stir it around, the water level increases. So you want to focus on that circulation of dollars. And we're going to talk more about how we might do that. So we can possibly look at 3 strategies or a combination of those strategies to accomplish that. The first might be education on the importance of keeping dollars local. So educating your residents on what it means when they invest those dollars in your local community, as opposed to spending them outside the community. Also, the power of the local multiplier effect, which we'll talk more about, and I'll give you a demonstration of that. And then the last one sometimes is referred to LOIS, but it's really focusing on locally owned and import substitution, or a combination of both. So in my work with Extension, I've done a lot of bilingual programming, education, and also helped with some different marketing efforts. These are just some of the graphics that we've created at Extension to kind of promote the importance of spending locally first. So thinking about So the police department is there to protect and to serve, and maybe so that first responders are there in an emergency. The fire department will be there when things get a little heated, or that you have workers available to keep your roads in good working order. Things like ensuring that there's funding for future road improvement projects, or in the wintertime, ensuring that we can have roads that are safe for travel because we have snow plows and other equipment to clear those roadways for us. Similarly, depending on your community, it might fund a community center. And so activities for whether it's youth or seniors. It could be that, you're looking to fund a local health department, depending on your structure. Also ways to have access to parks and recreational amenities, which could be very different. Also, thinking about spending locally first ensures that schools have adequate funds to provide students with a great education, and that there are recreational opportunities available for people of all ages. So things for them to do and activities for them to participate in. So in addition, we've done some work with youth on the topic of buy local. And those have included presentations primarily. We've worked with 4th and 5th grade students in the youth. I worked for a period of time in the Saline County Extension Office with Nancy Lambert, and she and I worked together to develop an activity for the 4th and 5th grade classrooms in Southern Illinois. So in their activity, they make their own money. We play a game, and their effort is to try to get their money into the community chest. And then we encourage the students at the end to think about a business idea that they would like to create in their own community. So in addition, we've also did this type of programming in the schools and in a junior high. And a couple of years ago, we had an opportunity to partner with them on a field trip for their 5th grade students. So they had 3 different 5th grades classrooms. They went in different directions throughout town, but basically they did a walking tour and they visited with local businesses. And many of the students were introduced to businesses that they have never been in before, even though the downtown is only located about 3 blocks from the school. So it was a great experience for the students, and I think they really enjoyed it, and they learned a lot about their local community. So Nancy and I have also developed programming for high school age students. We do try to make that as much as possible to be interactive. So they do some activities, and as you can see there on the right, create some posters. We've also developed some programs and do some work with creating entrepreneurial opportunities, CEO classes, and that are in some of the local counties throughout the region. So just trying to hit different age groups with that. Additional marketing efforts that we've done. I had the opportunity to work with Union County Women in Business as they were developing their first Shop Local programming for their county. So they did this signage, which was keep it in the county, think shop buy locally first. That was one of their first group projects to promote the importance of shopping local in Union County. They've certainly tweaked that through the years and have worked on different efforts, but that was one of the first campaigns that they launched. And recently we had the opportunity to work with a group of local community leaders, and we partnered with the Southernmost Illinois Tourism Bureau for an Eat Shop Love Local in Shawnee Forest Country marketing campaign that we had stickers and window clings and these cool shopping bags available for residents of the region to promote the importance of shopping local here in Shawnee Forest Country. So now we're going to shift to the power of the local multiplier effect. And you may have heard about the multiplier effect. There are different ways to think about that concept. I'm going to use a very localized effort for that in very simple terms. So as we go through this, when you think about spending your money, you actually have 3 possibilities. You can spend your money in a local community. You can go and spend your money outside the community, perhaps in a regional shopping destination, or you can buy something online. And depending on how you define community, what you have available to purchase within your community may vary. And some things we recognize in rural economies, certainly not everything is available. So think of examples of things that you do have available as we go through this activity. So your community might look, it might be a traditional downtown, it might be a main street, it might be a courthouse square or a tower square. Regardless how it's set up, we certainly hope that you have a variety of different businesses in your community that residents can patronize. So whether a local resident has $10 or $100 to spend, our hope would be that they would opt to spend that money in the local economy by choosing to shop at a local store. Now, that might not necessarily happen, but that is their hopes. And to demonstrate this exercise, we're going to assume that they do. Okay. So money goes from the resident to the local shop. Okay. So when it goes there, it's supporting the local shop. And if it's a retail type business, then it's also collecting sales tax as it moves from the resident to the business. Now, our hopes are that whether it's the shop owner or maybe one of their employees, that they in turn decide to take that money and maybe they're going to go to the local restaurant and have lunch. So we hope that that money in turn churns and goes to another local business. So at this point, the same dollar has supported two businesses. And if they're both retail oriented to where there's sales tax collected, they've collected sales tax twice on the same investment of money. So we would like to think that this just continues. So the money would go throughout the community from store to store and just continue. Our economic reality is at any point in the process, from the very beginning through to where we are right now, that money could easily leave the community as whether it's a resident, a shop owner, an employee, they actually take that money and go outside the community to spend it. Okay. But the more times that you can get the money to circulate in the local economy, the stronger your economy will be because the same bills are supporting the community over and over. And in many cases, also collecting sales tax over and over. Now, I don't want to make light of the fact, certainly there are lots of non-sales tax generating businesses, such as banking, insurance, and investments within communities. And they're equally important to the economic vitality of the community, though sales tax isn't collected. But I mentioned the sales tax just because it's helping to multiply the dollars that are collected on sales tax for the individual communities each time that happens. So if the money does move and go outside the community, what we typically see is when it leaves the community, it goes to, for instance, if it goes to an online destination, that online destination might be on the West Coast or the East Coast. The reality is that that money would ever come back to the local community are basically slim to none. So that money's left the economy, it's not coming back. Similarly, what we found is that typically when it leaves and goes to a regional shopping destination, it stays and continues to churn in the regional shopping destination because they have all types of businesses available for their shop owners, their residents, their employees to spend dollars at. So the money just continues to churn there, supporting those local businesses and supporting sales tax collections. What is unique is that if maybe you have a unique business in your community and maybe you're located in close proximity to the regional shopping destination, there might be an opportunity that some of the dollars may come back. Maybe you have a really cool pizza restaurant or you have a really cool boutique or something, so that you could have options that some of the dollars might come back. But the majority of them, once they leave and go to a regional shopping destination, don't typically return to the rural economy unless you have, once again, something unique that can pull those dollars back in. So traditionally, it was said that money circulated in the economy 7 times before it left, going from business to business, circulating over and over in support of those local businesses and in support of local tax structures and your budgets in your local communities. Sadly, today, the local multiplier is affected by how quickly those monies flow into our local economies and flow out as we purchase goods and services outside of our community. So those multipliers that used to maybe be at 7 in the good old days when everyone primarily shopped in their local community. Today, those multipliers, you may be lucky if your multiplier is a 1 or a 2. Certainly you can work on efforts to increase that number, but it's doubtful that there are very many rural communities that have a multiplier in the neighborhood of 6 to 7. But also the amount of your multiplier really depends on the communities, your asset base, the number and types of businesses you have, and also your residents' commitment to keeping those dollars circulating local in support of local businesses and local tax collections. So that impacts that. So typically, city and county revenues are based on where you live. So if we think about income, that's on a per capita basis, and real estate tax is based on where the home is located or where the business is located, and sales tax is based on where the sale is made. Or if it's a hotel, hotel taxes are collected similarly. Think about the way that's done. It's basically based on where you live, where the business is located, where the sale is made. And I do want to apologize if any of our attendees that are on the call today live outside of Illinois. I noticed on the registration that there were some out-of-state people that had registered for the event. The next few slides, we're going to go over our tax structure here in Illinois, and I apologize if yours is different, but this next section will be focused on how things work here in Illinois. So I'm going to give you an example. So this is an example of an Illinois city, and in Illinois, the standard sales tax rate is 6 1/4. And if you purchase something, 5% of that goes to the state, 1% goes to the city, municipality, and 1/4 goes to the county. Now, in addition to that, there are lots of opportunities for local taxes. So the example that I'm going to give you, this local community also has a 1% countywide school facilities tax and a 1.25% home rule tax for their city. So if you make a purchase in that community, your total sales tax is 8.5%. And these are the different buckets that sales tax would be dispersed to. That's how it would be divided. Now, there are other sales tax options besides countywide school facilities. There's also public safety. In addition to home rule, there's non-home rule, there's business district. There are other ways. And today, across the state, we really have rates that vary from that standard 6 1/4 to some that are more than 9%. So they are increasing as they're looking for opportunities to identify new revenue sources. So for this community, this is how the money would flow if they purchased something in their own city or municipality. Now, if they purchase the same thing outside of their city limits, so in their county, but outside their city limits, the money that goes to support their city goes away. They still pay sales tax, but the sales tax rate and those additional local taxes vary based on where you're spending the money. So money doesn't necessarily go into your city coffer for the 1%. It goes into their city coffer, and you pay whatever additional rates they have. So then think about it another way. So if you make the same purchase in the state of Illinois, but you go out of your county to make the purchase, you're still going to pay sales tax at whatever rate is applicable wherever you spend your money, but everything that supports your city and your county goes away. because those buckets in turn change to the city and county where you made the purchase. 5% still goes to the state, but the rest of that goes away. And then if you go to an out-of-state purchase, basically it all goes away. You're going to pay sales tax at whatever rate is applicable in that state or in that county or municipality, however it works for them. But none of it goes to support your state, your city, or your county. And certainly there are some new exceptions given the sales tax issue related to online purchases. That's beyond the scope of this session today, but I did want to note that certainly there are some specific issues there. So in economic development, and I noticed from the listing that a lot of people on the call or who registered for it do work in economic development. And I think you'll agree it's hard to find new money to flow into the local economy. Therefore, it's crucial that the money is available in your local economy works harder for you. So keeping the money working harder for your community, your county, or your region. So revenues and expenses, when we think of those, what we're seeing today is that given that revenues seem to be remaining flat or in some cases declining, expenses are continuing to rise, that cities and counties are faced with difficult choices, as is the state. So with those choices, you look at ways to increase revenues. So at the state level, that might be increasing the income tax. When you get to the local level, that might be increasing the real estate tax, or as we've mentioned previously, increasing the sales tax. So there's a new school facilities option, a public safety option. There's other options as well to increase revenues that way. Or there could be fee structure increases for services that they provide. The flip side of that is that they decrease expenses. So they do things to cut staff, to cut services. So it ends up that you have fewer infrastructure investments and other improvements in your community, or they do a combination of the two. I will say, I think it's kind of been interesting that, especially as this relates to rural, that rural communities have been losing local businesses. So losing sales tax because of having fewer and fewer businesses located within their counties or their communities. But we've given the opportunity for them to increase sales tax to support school facility and public safety at the same time that they have less money coming in. So that's one way that they've identified that there's less dollars coming in. Let's increase the tax that way to bring in additional dollars. Look for new revenues. And certainly because of our rural communities and how the different assets that they have available to them, there can be dramatic differences in the number and types of businesses that you have, and therefore a dramatic difference in the dollars that you can collect from those efforts for school facilities and public safety compared to maybe a neighboring community or county. So in general, we know there's other ways that funds come in. That's beyond the scope of this session, but locally, the primary funding source for schools is real estate taxes. So those are taxes paid by residents of the district. So if your population is declining and maybe you don't have a lot of new homes being built, the real estate tax may not be going up in your area. Similarly, it's taxes paid by businesses located within the district. So if you have business closures and you don't have a lot of new business development, the amount of real estate taxes available could be going down as well, unless they're looking at alternatives to increase those taxes. And also importantly, when we think about the importance of local business, schools rely heavily on the local business community for support, as do your nonprofits and other fundraising groups. So it's really vital to your community to have those funds available and to have strong businesses that can help support your community. And if business is struggling, they're not going to be able to help your community with things. It's just not going to be an economic reality for them. So then we're going to shift our thought process to import substitution. Now, if we think of this as at the national or global level, you're thinking about trade and economic policy. So advocating for replacing foreign imports with domestic production. So we're gonna think about import substitution from a local level. So from our rural economy perspective. So we're going to think about how we can replace imports. So purchases that residents make outside the community or online with purchases of similar quality within the community. So things that we can substitute for things that we're currently importing in. So once again, every community is different, the assets and the businesses that you have available. So everyone's opportunities are different. So for local sourcing, when we think of that, so if you can buy gasoline at a local gas station, I'd buy gasoline at a local gas station, because when you can't buy it at a local station, you're going to miss that opportunity. Buying groceries at the local supermarket. Trust me, from a personal perspective, when your local grocery store closes, you don't want that to happen, because then you're forced with maybe traveling 25 to 30 minutes to a larger community so that you can get groceries. And as I mentioned previously, maybe you have the opportunity to buy large ticket items locally. So maybe you can go buy a new SUV, or you can buy those building materials at the local lumberyard. Similarly, you could contract for insurance with local providers. You can invest or finance with local financial institutions. Contract for services locally when you can. Can you get your car repaired? Can you get your hair cut? Patronizing your local restaurants, your pharmacy, your specialty shops, things of that nature, ways that you can keep more money circulating, perhaps instead of those dollars leaking out. How can you circulate more of those dollars in your local community? Because that reinvestment from businesses is really important when you think about, once again, the value of businesses to your community. They typically invest in local banks and use local insurance agents. They typically spend their profits locally when possible. They pay and generate local taxes. If possible, they hire local service providers and advertise in your local media. And as we said, they're the major supporters of local charities, athletic programs, fundraisers, and school activities. So once again, things that you care about in your community. Local businesses help make a lot of that happen. So in the smallest communities throughout Southern Illinois to the largest, we see so much pride in the local schools, and especially the local sports teams. And we need to have that same pride in our local business community and the community in general, making sure it's clean and it's inviting and welcoming. Plus, it just makes good business sense to invest in your community and keep your dollars working close to home. So wanted to give another example of import substitution. So once again, import substitution is opting to purchase something inside your community rather than making the purchase outside your community. And there are many products that I could have chosen for this example. And this is nothing against Yankee Candle. They have a great product. I just picked something that I thought would be easy for everyone to understand the concept. So what are the different ways that I can make that purchase? So when we think about that, I could order it online. I could go and buy it in a regional shopping destination. Or if it's available, I could perhaps buy it at a local boutique in my community. Those are the three options. Okay. So depending on the choice that where I'm going to purchase that, where does the money go? That's really what becomes critical for your community. So, oops, sorry, I advanced in general. So if I purchase that online, the money goes to either the online vendor or maybe directly to Yankee Candle, which, by the way, is in South Deerfield, Massachusetts. I looked that up because I didn't know where they were. So if I purchase it from the regional shopping destination, the money goes to the store, the location where I purchased it. and that's where the sales tax is collected. And then Yankee Candle is also going to get money that goes back to them in South Deerfield, Massachusetts, because it was imported in for sale. If it's available at a local boutique, the local store in my local community gets the money, and the sales tax is collected locally in your community. However, since it is an import, some money still goes to Yankee Candle Company in South Deerfield, Massachusetts, because the business had to purchase that item to be able to resell it to you. So this candle example is a great way for you to think about what's perhaps missing in your community and identify perhaps a new business opportunity or perhaps a new product line that could be added to an existing store to keep more money circulating locally and collecting sales tax locally. So thinking about what are things that you can shift and do import substitution to keep more dollars circulating locally. And in addition to just having a product like Yankee Candle available in your local community, you could also choose to purchase a locally made candle. So with that, the sales supports the local candle maker, plus the sales tax is collected locally. And if it's sold by a local business, of course, it supports the local business as well that's selling the candle for the candle maker. So as you think more about import substitution, I hope that you'll think of other examples. And I'll leave that question for you to ponder as we get near the end of the program here. I did want to give credit. So the pool analogy that we've discussed today, it's sometimes called the bathtub analogy. It's not unique to the Community Development Council, but I did want to give credit to the original Community Development Handbook that was used when I completed Midwest Community Development Institute back in 2006 through 2008. So I recreated the concept here from that and the content for you so that you could have it all available to you. But unfortunately, I don't think it is included in the most recent edition of the handbook. Some of the concepts are discussed, but they're not really laid out in the same way that I think this pool analogy helps you to understand that process. So kind of in closing, in most situations, I'm going to say that I don't think people shop outside their community in an effort to harm their local businesses. However, over the years, major big box retailers have emphasized to customers the importance of price, which can often mean that the lowest price isn't available in your community. So they opt to go purchase it somewhere else. However, the piece that's not mentioned with that marketing effort is what happens to your local community when those dollars no longer circulate locally in support of your local businesses and your local economy. I've heard consumers tell me this. I have to do the best thing for my family and our budget, which means that I'm going to take my dollars and spend them where prices are cheaper. However, what that means in the long run is that the opportunities are going to change dramatically in their communities as a result if others are doing the same thing. So real estate taxes may go up, which impacts you whether you own or rent. The availability of amenities may decrease. For example, the community can maybe no longer maintain the park. They can't fix the potholes, the streetlights, repave the roadways, or any other number of things, simply because the community's budget no longer supports it because of decreased revenues, while expenses continue to go up. And several years ago, when I first started doing programming on buy local education, I did a program for a homemakers extension group down here in southernmost Illinois. And at the end of the program, one lady said to me, and she looked at me, and you could tell that the light bulb had went off with her. And she goes, "So we've done this to ourselves." And what she meant was that they in her community had opted to start shopping not only outside their local community in favor of a regional shopping destination, but that regional shopping destination wasn't even in their state. So all of their dollars from their community were leaking out of Southern Illinois in favor of one of our neighboring states. And you may have unique issues and leakage of dollars if you're in the middle of the state of Illinois. It can happen anywhere, and it certainly happens if you're on the boundaries. Maybe you're located close to Terre Haute or something of that nature. Here in southernmost Illinois, we have this unique position. It's very narrow at the bottom of the tip of the state. It's not very far from east to west, and our residents have unique opportunities to quickly be in regional shopping destinations in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and Evansville, Indiana, and Paducah, Kentucky. Taking the dollars not just out of their community, but actually taking them out of Southern Illinois' economy and depositing them in the economies of the neighboring states where they stay and continue to churn. And so those are just things, kind of food for thought. And I appreciate your effort. And I think Mike is going to do the closing for us here.
Thank you so much, Susan. Terrifically interesting. Before we take any questions, let's put up a quick poll. We do this regularly to get a quick sense of reaction from folks on, make sure we can take stock of the programming and its effectiveness. So if Nancy will put up that poll. Again, you have some time if you want to drop questions into the chat box, that would be great. Susan, I had one question that I'd like to pose to you.
Okay.
Regarding leakage, could you maybe explain some ways that a community or a region might be able to measure that leakage? Are there tools out there? Are there particular organizations that help communities and regions measure that leakage?
Thanks for the question, Mike, and it's a great one. And I'll be honest with you, it's also a frustrating one. Years ago, at the point that I started the position of educator, so this is around 2011, 2012, I worked with Zach Kennedy, and we gathered information on. At that time, I worked in the southern 16 counties. And we gathered retail leakage data for each of the counties, the southern 16 counties. And we also gathered corresponding data for the counties in southeast Missouri, southern Indiana, and western Kentucky to demonstrate that. And that information was available through a program called Business Analyst. Sadly, that data is no longer available, that leakage data. And the primary reason that they have given to Zach Kennedy, who's our colleague and a data guru, is that they can just no longer provide what they feel is valid data. And it's because of the growth of online shopping and the interesting dynamics that go along with when it's collected, where it's collected, who it supports, things of that nature. So they have unfortunately stopped providing that information from that source. There are some other push and pull factors that you can look at. I don't think they have the same impact as saying to a community that you had a leakage of $55 million or whatever the number might be. I think that has much more impact, but there are some push-pull factors that can be calculated, and certainly there's not just one way to calculate those. There are several ways to do that, but that is one way that we can demonstrate whether they have more money flowing out of their local economy than they have coming in, things like that. So we could work on some of that, but sadly, the source that I really liked and I think was important is no longer available to us.
Understood. Well, thanks for the answer to the question. We have reached the end of the hour. And thank you for the poll results, everybody. We'll conclude today by thanking Susan on behalf of the University of Illinois Extension for her presentation today, on behalf of everybody who attended today. As I mentioned earlier, if you did register for the webinar, you will receive presentation materials and a link to the recording in a follow-up email. If you're not already receiving our email notices about upcoming webinar offerings, please drop your email into the chat before you go, and we will add you to our email list. For example, coming up on Tuesday, March 25th, again at noon, we'll have the next installment of our Resilient Communities webinar series. And on Thursday, March 27th, also at noon, Susan will join us again for a second program on creating stronger, more sustainable rural economies. I also want to invite you to visit our website at go.illinois.edu/LGE to access our video archives of prior presentations on a wide variety of community development topics. So with that, thank you all for attending today's webinar. Have a great day, and we hope to see you back for future presentations.
Thank you all.